Hey there, what's happening? Tim Warner here. All right, so let's imagine that you're tasked with giving a presentation in the next weeks. So you're going to use, say, PowerPoint or Apple Keynote to develop a slideshow, and you're looking and you're faced with the old blank slide question or the blank canvas situation. What do? I talked about analysis paralysis and the perils of perfectionism in previous episodes of this series. So I'll just refer you to that content for that material. But given that you're ready to start moving forward, how do you break ground in your presentation? I feel very strongly about this subject. I'm very passionate about it. And I'm a visual person, so I think of my presentations, whether it's going to be a 1-hour lunch and learn or whether it's going to be a several-hour video course, I'm thinking in terms of shape. I'm thinking of the silhouette of the presentation. Let's not talk about a multi-module course. Let's just say it's a single presentation. What do I mean by shape of the presentation? I'm thinking in terms of what does the entire presentation look like and how does it hang together? Is there a core or unifying message? My most important guidance for you in structuring a presentation or a lesson is really twofold. It's to define your core message, know exactly what it is that you want to transmit. Because if you're fuzzy there, you might as well stop and continue brainstorming. That would be another subject for another lesson. Let me write that down. The brainstorming process. That's a really good subject. You need to know what it is that you're talking about and put an outer boundary around that content, because otherwise you may be subject to scope creep, where you're adding more and more and more and more, and then you wind up with 50 minutes to present 150 minutes worth of material. On the other hand, you don't want to be so rigorous and so tightly scoped that you wind up with 25 minutes of material to go over 50 minutes. This is something that simply requires time, effort, and practice to get right, to calibrate content to your time constraints. In fact, that's another whole issue. In terms of choosing my core message, I need to know what my constraints are. When I do a planning call with a client and they're asking me to do a presentation for them, the things I want to know right off the bat are, what are the constraints? What is the time window? How much time are you looking at for the overall session? How much time do you want me to flap my gums for? Are we going to reserve time for Q&A? I want to have that explicit so I've got that number in my head. Like an actor who's looking at their mark tape on the stage and they need to know where they're going to be when. I need to know the boundary here so I can shape the presentation to custom fit those constraints. So defining your core message is the most important point for me. But right alongside it is knowing your audience. Who is it that you're presenting to? Hopefully, it's a relatively monolithic group. And by monolithic, I mean that they're all there for the same reason. If I'm there to present on AI and there are people in there with no interest or scope of AI, then what are we doing here? We're wasting each other's time. But for me, it's more or less, who is the audience? Are these business people who are less technically proficient? Are these practitioners? Are these developers? Are these data engineers? You can't look in a crystal ball and know exactly who's going to be in the audience. But again, to have the clearest picture possible, that's the point, I think. So knowing the audience and keeping that audience in my head as I actually create the presentation. Now, as far as creating the presentation and having it develop a shape or a structure, I'm a big fan of storytelling. Several years ago, I saw this lady named Nancy Duarte, a Duarte. She's well known in the public speaking realm, and she's a big proponent of storylines. And what does that mean? It means thinking of an arc, setup, confrontation, climax, and resolution, including characters and conflicts. Maybe using a case study format, maybe having the learner be the hero. That's really what Nancy stresses more than anything else, is that you as an instructor aren't the hero of the story. It's actually your audience, your learners, and you put them right up on center stage as the main character in your story. Using visuals, other storytelling techniques, analogies, anecdotes, metaphors, ending with a call to action. These are all little techniques that you can add in that keep you on track in terms of having a consistent through line through your presentation from beginning to middle to end, so that the content not only builds cumulatively, but by the time you reach at the end, you don't have to just repeat what they've learned. I always like in my conclusions, I like to incorporate what we've learned, but then do some new insights based on that. Basically a synthesis of what we've learned, and then a call to action, what I think you should do next. That's good. It's a good way to create that flow, build suspense, build interest, keep a cohesive storyline or through line through the training or through the presentation. There's something that just dropped out of my head that was important about that. Yeah, because I've had some instructional design training where the lesson was really old-fashioned. Tell them what you're going to teach them, then tell them what you taught them. That's really old school, and I've done that before. I've evolved past it, though, because I find when I'm looking at video training, when somebody's doing that, it's patently obvious what they're doing. And frankly, it seems like a cop-out to just repeat. You know, you've got objective. In this lesson, we'll learn A, B, and C. And then at the end of the lesson, in this lesson, you learned A, B, and C. I mean, yeah, if you really need to connect the dots explicitly, I suppose. But I really believe in adding additional value at the end. I just don't want to regurgitate for the sake of regurgitating. Who likes regurgitating anyway? On the other hand, as an adult educator, I know that repetition is key to learning and mastery, especially when you're first encountering a subject matter. So I definitely like to repeat and reiterate and recurse and refer, cross-reference within a lesson. Like later in the lesson, referring to things we've did earlier and so on. And I also do the opposite, where I'll foreshadow. We're here in this part of the session, but a little bit later when we get here, and then tie that together. It's like weaving. It's like weaving a tapestry, where the threads are all interconnected and they form a really nice big picture. But you also can zoom in on the micro detail, and that makes sense as well. Ideally, that's what I'm shooting for. And then when I am doing a longer form training that involves multiple lessons or modules, I'm thinking at another level of abstraction in terms of looking at a through line module to module to module, you see? So you can look at a storyline within a single lesson. And then if you've got multiple lessons, how can I weave that through line through them all? And that doesn't have to be, for me anyway, I'm just speaking for myself, that doesn't have to be like a case study that you carry from beginning to the end. I don't know if I'm disciplined to do that. We're going to be a fictional company called Wired Brain Roasters, and then for hours you're continuing that same storyline. That gets stale to me and a bit contrived. So it's not like I have to refer to the same exact storyline, but I'm still looking at the lessons like a mother bird looks at her chicks, and seeing how they're relating to each other and how they hang together as a whole. And then frankly, like at Pluralsight, I have multiple courses that follow. Like now I'm doing a lot with OpenAI and generative artificial intelligence. I'm looking at yet another level above abstraction, where I'm looking at my entire courses. And generally speaking, they're standalone, but I nonetheless have in the back of my mind how I can put them together logically. Maybe not to where you have to do course 1, 2, 3, 4. I understand that in 21st century, a learner may start with course 4. So putting a sequence on the courses isn't really advisable, generally speaking, for me anyway. But I'm still thinking about what I accomplished in each one of those courses. And I want my learner to have a consistent experience such that if they're studying multiple of my courses, in many ways, it feels just like a continuation. And I'm hoping, my goal is that they feel comfortable, safe, encouraged, empowered, and inspired. And because I'm consistent across my courses, they're able, as a learner, to maintain that level of inspiration and engagement as they work among those different courses. So those are some top-line thoughts that I have about finding the shape of your presentation. Again, it's something I feel really strongly about, and as a visual learner, it's definitely central to my teaching philosophy. I'd look forward to hearing your feedback, especially if you're a teacher yourself. Thanks again. I'll see you.